Hello, everybody. I am Neal Coolong. You are watching the New Standard Podcast. I am your host today. Lance Williams, our fearless leader, was once again called in by the CIA to carry out an operation in parts unknown. That's the only detail that I have on that. He's in parts unknown, doing our country a great service, I am sure. I want to thank you all for being here. I'm going to fly solo for the first part of this, but I got some content here planned. I'm going to bring in Doug Farrar of USA Today Sports Media Group's Touchdown Wire, national NFL writer. Great insight, great guest, longtime supporter and friend of the program. We are going to discuss a few things pertaining to the general topic that we have here today, which is, in case you haven't noticed or seen, there's been a bit of some consternation surrounding a certain list that was created by ESPN as part of a series that they do that did not include a certain quarterback. And that's got a lot of people up in arms. And we want to ask today, what is in a list? What exactly goes into creating a list of a ranked player, top players, funniest players, whatever it happens to be? And Doug is somebody who produces some of those, probably not at his own interest, but his moron boss is the one that tells him to do it all the time, tells him to be on the podcast as well. But again, yes, the New Standard Podcast. I'm Neal Coolong. I'm going to be your host this afternoon. I am pre-recording this because neither Lance nor I have the availability to do this at the regular time, but we are going to post this at the regular time tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Central, 8:30 a.m. Pacific. I also want to dive into the big Steelers news of the week. You definitely have heard about this, Acrisure Stadium. That is the new name of the Steelers facility. And I want to discuss that a little bit, knowing that your opinions are probably very similar to mine on it. But I want to explain a little bit of what goes into naming a stadium. And really the main thing that I came up with is the bottom line is the bottom line. Business is business. When it comes to naming a stadium, which is something that has really been in operation for a really long time, but in full effect, it kind of started in the 90s with the stadium boom across all of sports in the United States. New stadiums were being built, naming it after a certain company that's willing to pay money over a certain amount of years to lease that space, if you will, helps pay for the operation, the day-to-day expense that any team might have while they're there. As you well know, 2001, the Steelers opened Heinz Field, which I've always felt is one of the best corporate named stadiums, simply because it's a local product that's connected to the area. It's an international brand that everybody knows. You're familiar with the name Heinz, and it's not awkward. More than anything else, it's not awkward. That may as well be named after a person because, well, I mean, the company is. When you get into weird names, trendy names, the real corporate buzzy types of stuff that think tanks getting paid thousands of dollars an hour are paid to do market research on and come up with stylistic ways to try to brand a company, they come up with names like Acrisure. I look at it, I see the word erasure. And if anybody is old like me and remembers the song, Give a Little Respect, it'll probably be stuck in your head all day if you've never heard it. But I look at that, I think of the band Erasure. Acrisure is the name. This is, from what I understand, some type of financial and insurance related product or tool that I don't think the average person uses. And that's probably why nobody knows the name of the stadium, but that's exactly the point. If you want to get your brand out there, sometimes you gotta spend to do that. And the $50 million that they'll be spending over 15 years certainly suggests that is the type of thing that they want to invest in. Now, doing a little bit of generic internet research, I also discovered that the Seattle Kraken minor league hockey team based in Palm Springs, California, is Acrisure Arena. That it was just being built. They just got the naming rights for that, and they're going to kick that off this fall, I guess. So maybe there are now 2 cities that have ever heard of this company. It is Michigan based, so maybe some people in Michigan know that, although Jeff Risden, my Browns editor, who is from Michigan, lives in Michigan, has never heard of it either. So I don't know. I know that the name is awkward. It is not an everyday brand, and it's not something loads of people are familiar with. So this really doesn't check any box for me. But the bottom line is the bottom line. Business is business. There's a lot of money that's involved with this. I will also say this as well, as being from Pittsburgh and having recently just lived there for several years. Nobody in Pittsburgh is going to call this Acrisure Stadium. Those of you on the show right now, thank you for being here. I don't need to tell you this. Pittsburgh is not conservative politically per se, but when it comes to their civic duties, their structure, they don't mess with that. I have an uncle who's still pissed off about a certain stretch of highway being renamed. That happened 20 years ago. He still complains about it. I know this because I left and came back. The Star Lake Amphitheater apparently at some point had a corporate name change of its own, and more people cried about the new name, whatever it was. For it was like 2 decades or something. It had a different name. Everybody called it the Star Lake Amphitheater, and people like me were not even aware that they had changed the name. And they recently changed it back, and I still don't think anybody even realized it was ever called anything else. They're not going to call it anything but Heinz Field. That's the name forever. Which brings me really to my main point with all of this. If you're Heinz, and keep in mind, Heinz is a company that merged with Kraft during the lease of the name of the Steelers Stadium. Kraft may or may not want anything to do with it. It might be a different brand. They want to go in a different direction. But if you know Pittsburgh, you know no one's calling it anything but Heinz Field. Everyone is going to stick with it for at minimum a couple years before people even get used to it. Do you want to continue to pay money for that, or do you already have what you want with it? Business choice for me, regardless of whatever Acrisure paid for the rights to name the field. If everyone's calling it Heinz Field, that's at least what the natives are going to call it. You got to kind of think that maybe it's redundant at this point. Maybe we want to go in a different direction. And then on top of that, as I understand it, Acrisure came in with a massive offer, which was way more than what Kraft Heinz wanted to pay. So business is business. That's going to be kind of the way that it goes. But I am sure we are not going to go out of our way to quickly correct ourselves if we refer to it as Heinz Field. I know I had a problem here and there referring to them as the San Diego Chargers, as the Las Vegas Raiders. I think I'm just going to keep calling it Heinz Field. I'm not sure about you guys, but certainly leave us a comment, drop us a line on Twitter. Let us know what you think about it. Now, I've got Doug Farrar here waiting in the wings, and I want to kind of introduce what our main topic is here. Full disclosure, I am manager of a digital network that produces content across the NFL. The NFL Wire Network is owned by USA Today Sports Media Group, is a collection of team-themed websites all with the idea in mind of catering content toward the super fan of the NFL. What that means to some degree is we will create, among a lot of other things, but we will create ranking lists. This is a product that we refer to as a listicle. Put the word list and article together, that's a listicle. Listicle style content, or more specifically in this case, top X lists, top 11, top 8, whatever it is, are really popular come July. And you can probably figure out why. There's not a whole lot to really talk about. It is an opportunity, though, to be a lot more creative and to come up with different points of view, different opinions, package content in a different way, a unique way that we might not have the time to do during the season as much, though we still will. It gives us a chance to kind of level set where everything is in the NFL while news is not coming at us fast and furious, which it usually is, come late July through now, mid-February. The big thing that is making me want to talk about this today, ESPN's Jeremy Fowler recently posted his quarterbacks rankings as part of his top 10 position ranking series, which is a yearly tradition for the veteran scribe who used to cover the Steelers for ESPN. You might remember him from a couple of years ago. Great writer, great reporter, great guy. The absence of Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson drew the typical ire of any Jackson stan who doesn't read that the former NFL MVP hasn't been playing at the same level as he was when he was an MVP, and that sends them into an absolute rage. At the same time, the suggestion that Lamar Jackson is anything other than a running back and he's a garbage player and it was a fluke that he won MVP comes out from the other side. Doug Farrar, who I'm going to bring in here, is perhaps the finest NFL mind that I know. He is somebody that has dealt with me incessantly asking him questions and telling him my thoughts on things for literally
Checks
hours.
in the mail, by the way.
Literally hours at a time on the phone. We had a long discussion about this today in preparation for this show. Doug was kind enough to join me, and I appreciate it. Again, Doug Farrar, he is our national NFL writer for our Touchdown Wire property, which covers all of the NFL, and the current part author of our own series of position rankings. We're going to talk about Fowler's ranking here because that's kind of what's got people up in arms. Doug has not yet released his quarterbacks rankings. So, Doug, I want to get into Fowler's piece a little bit here. You know Lamar Jackson. We have discussed many times the hot and the cold, the up and the down. He is probably something in the middle of two extremes, and he's really a difficult player to evaluate for a couple different reasons. But I want to ask you, if you can reveal to us, is Lamar Jackson going to be in your top? Is it 11? Are you going to do 11 quarterbacks?
Mark Schofield is doing our quarterback rankings. I'm going to get not the analysis, but Mark's going to send me the list of quarterbacks this weekend because I have to assemble the top 101 players out of the 14 position lists we're doing. I would imagine he'll be top 10, but I don't know. I mean, Mark may do 13 or 14 because we wanted to do 11, and this is coming from you saying, why do you do 11 instead of 10? Because people ask why 11 and they click on it, and that's a Neal thing. Very smart. My own analysis, I can't speak for Mark because I don't know. I mean, I could ask him where he'd put Lamar, but that doesn't really tell me why. My own analysis, and we discussed this morning in one of our 3-hour conversations. By the way, on the stadium thing real quick, I grew up in Denver. Nobody calls it Empower Field at Mile High. Everybody calls it Mile High Stadium. Up here in Seattle, where I've lived since 1985, it's not Lumen Field, it's the Clink because they used to call it CenturyLink. Some people still call it Seahawks Stadium. So it's what catches as opposed to what doesn't. It doesn't matter how much you pay. So agreed. No one's going to call it. What is it? Acrisure? It's like Happy Fun Ball. Not Taunt Acrisure.
It's the dumbest name. I'm glad they have the money to pay for the namesake of an NFL stadium, which is big money and it's big exposure. Good for them as a business for doing it.
Yeah.
Who the hell named your company? How do you? What is that? It's just dumb.
It's like
that stuff bothers me.
It's like that nebulous business language. Product solutions for new blah blah blah.
Exactly. All those buzzwords that
it means nothing.
Synergy and there was a synergy field for a while.
You and I have ranted about this before.
I just hate that stuff. Just make it cool. Make it not awkward. Make it something people can relate to. I get your product. You want exposure. And yes, there is something to be said about, there's no such thing as bad publicity. I would disagree with that nowadays, but this is the realm of something in which I think it fits because now everybody knows what this name is. But the joke is nobody does, and nobody likes the name. We're not going to get Pittsburgh does not Pittsburgh doesn't roll over on these kinds of things. This is a hill Pittsburgh will absolutely die on. They're selling t-shirts right now supporting Heinz Field.
Yeah.
The free advertising that Heinz is getting over this, playing the martyr in the whole thing. It's brilliant.
This is an organization that's had 3 coaches since 1969. They don't
exactly.
real well.
They're not. Oh man, it was bad enough. Three Rivers went away, and that was Three Rivers was an abomination.
Big ashtray, baby.
Oh boy.
So Lamar. Yeah.
Getting back to Lamar, the Acrisure of cornerbacks.
We don't know what he is.
I'm gonna get in trouble.
We're not so Acrisure. By the way, speaking of names, when you mentioned listicles, I was doing something. I wanted to make sure that the code would work in something, so I did a test listicle, and guess what I almost called it?
Acrisure.
No, a test listicle.
Test listicle. Good. I didn't even think of that, and that's ruined for me forever now.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway. We're gonna prank somebody with that
soon. Yep, that'll be the next WordPress thing. Into the bowels of the
those two words are not allowed to be put together.
God, I'm gonna get fired, and it's Friday afternoon. Okay. Anyway, so Lamar, getting back to that before we go completely off the rails. The point I made. Well, there are a few things. So as far as do you want to talk about Lamar first or the list process?
Let's get into Lamar first. I'm going to segue into the list process. Let me actually know what I'm doing as a host.
So
I actually planned on that.
The thing about Lamar, and I made this point, I don't know if he's a top 10 quarterback. I think in 2020 he was, because he was really good from the pocket, which, of course, when you're a athletic quarterback, people don't think you're good from the pocket. I'm going to be perfectly frank here. When you're a black athletic quarterback, people really don't think you're good from the pocket. That just goes on history. And
you got to prove it way more.
Yeah. And I remember halfway through the 2020 season, I think it was Rich Gannon, who I have a great deal of respect for as an analyst. Gannon, obviously, great quarterback when he played, knows what the hell he's doing. Would say, well, Lamar's never been good from the pocket. And I went and researched it, and I found like 3 or 4 different examples of announcers saying this. And it's one of those things where, garbage in, garbage out, and you're not actually paying attention. Lamar was really, really good in the pocket in 2020. I believe he had run for 1,000 yards 2 straight seasons. And I think in 2020 he didn't. I'm going to check that again right now. So you have a guy, rushing. So in 2019 and 2020. So 2020, he improved greatly as a pocket passer, and he ran for 1,005 yards. We've never seen anything like this before. This has never happened before. This is like, it's just so new that we don't really know what to do with it. And because we have these sort of preconceptions of Lamar as this runaround guy, we don't think he's good from the pocket. Well, the numbers from the pocket in 2020, completed 223 passes of 223 of 335 passes for 2,509 yards, 1,356 air yards, 19 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, passer rating of 94.0. That's like top 12. So when you have a guy who can run for over 1,000 yards and do that from the pocket, again, we are dealing with an unprecedented weapon in NFL, in pro football history. The problem with Lamar is that he regressed in a lot of ways last year. And there are people who will defend Lamar and blame Greg Roman. I've been defending Lamar since all that stupid crap Bill Polian said about him having to switch to receiver before he was drafted. He was my number 1 prospect in his class of all players. So I think you can defend Lamar to a point and say that Greg Roman schemed up a lot of hole shots for Lamar that Lamar didn't see last year. You can blame his garbage receivers, and we've all talked about that.
And we will.
Well, those receivers were schemed open and had hole shots, and sometimes Lamar didn't take advantage, and sometimes Lamar did take advantage, and Hollywood Brown just dropped balls that came right into his hands.
I want to interject really quick just to point out that it is reasonable to say that Hollywood Brown is, per target, the worst receiver in the NFL. And that's not hyperbole. I honestly
he's the worst guy who's ever been traded for a first-round draft pick. I can tell you that.
You know what? Let's use that. We'll use that instead. That's our headline.
Yeah. So
Ravens had to be beside themselves with how fortunate.
And then
I can't believe they got that.
They get the next Sean Taylor with the 14th overall pick, and the next Jason Kelsey at 20, whatever. It's like, God.
That's frustrating.
You guys. And here I am in Seattle. We're like, well, what are we doing? Anyway. So the point you and I were talking about this morning. The point I made about Lamar is that Lamar, in my opinion, I don't know that he's top 10 as a quarterback, as a thrower of the football in a functional NFL offense.
Just call it a thrower. So he's not a top 10 passer. I don't think anybody.
I would say top 15. Lamar as a weapon, and I don't want to get into the term athlete because for Black quarterbacks, that's
it's too coded.
I will not use that term because
let's just talk about what this is. He's an asset to the offense.
Let's talk about him as a weapon and as an offensive weapon. And I asked you today: is there a more terrifying, a more potentially devastating offensive weapon in the NFL than Lamar Jackson? It would be like if Tyreek Hill could throw.
Yeah, basically.
There is no more terrifying weapon in the NFL than Lamar Jackson because he does so many things.
When I watch Lamar, when you see Lamar run in the open field, the guy I think of most is Devin Hester. Yeah. He's got kind of that crouched over shoulder acceleration that rivals a Ferrari, and he can cut on a dime. He's literally like a rabbit in the open field. He's extremely difficult to have to hem down. Now, on a play-to-play basis, do I care if he is mechanically, his footwork isn't the best throwing the ball? No, because when that dude's in the open field, you don't know what he can do. But you sit there tense, waiting for somebody to go get him. For me, there isn't anyone else in the league who's like that. I'm not saying as a fan, I get nervous when I see him run because I don't like the team he plays for.
Well, and that, the whole like running and injury, and that's a whole different subject. But would you have said that Michael Vick and that's my closest comp because Michael Vick had run for 1,000 yards once in a season. Lamar's done it twice in the last 3 years, which is insane. And he ran for like 800 yards last year and he was hurt. Jeez. Michael Vick from 04 through 06, when the Falcons led the league in rushing every season, would you have called him a top 20 quarterback? Probably not. Was he the most incredible weapon in the NFL? Probably.
It's just dangerous. He's He's a big play waiting to happen. That's the main thing. You can work with him to some degree as a passer. You can work on the footwork. You can work on the vision. You can work on the scheme. So he sees the whole shots you were talking about.
Well, and the improvement happened in 2020. He regressed for a lot of reasons, some of which was on him and some of which was on other things.
10,000 foot level, the game is hard. You have to reestablish yourself every year. It's not the easiest thing. And this is the point that you had made earlier. He turns 26 in December or something
26
like that?
In January. He's
a kid.
25 years old.
He's a kid. He didn't even play much in college. He wasn't there that long. He destroyed the game so badly he had to leave.
Now the crucible for Lamar is with his contract because now he's looking for X number of years, X hundreds of millions of dollars, and whatever.
Which the market shows that. I definitely don't want to get into his contract situation.
To go back to the Vick comparison. When after Vick went to jail and came out, and the Eagles signed him, Marty Mornhinweg. It was more Marty than Andy Reid. Marty got him on point with a version of the West Coast offense that he was comfortable with. And for about a year, Michael Vick, who could still run, kind of set the NFL on fire as a passer. And that's what the Ravens are hoping for. That's what Lamar Jackson's hoping for. It's what everyone, who wants to see the sort of what I've always called the evolutionary Steve Young, that's what you hope for. Can he get there? I don't know. But so Lamar as a quarterback, top 15. Lamar as a weapon, number 1. The problem is we're ranking quarterbacks.
Yep.
With Lamar, you almost need, as I said, he's an army of one. There isn't anyone else like him in NFL history. So to evaluate and then rank him as a quarterback is something that's not going to favor him.
It's hard. Bottom line is it's hard. And as far as Fowler's list goes, just to go over the specifics, the higher level specifics of how he did it. He's speaking to, and I quote this from the article itself, executives, coaches, and scouts across the NFL. They're unnamed, and he's quoting some of them and tallying votes for all of these things. The criticism of Lamar was not anything that we haven't heard before, I would say. Lamar was an honorable mention, though I got the sense that he was an honorable mention in the sense that you had to mention him in this somehow or other. You're going to have to. One part that I found to be the most telling, probably, of why he was excluded on this list. He struggled mightily in his last 3 full games with 6 interceptions and 13 sacks as teams blitzed him heavily. Doug, like you, I watched I believe was the last game that he played, the game against Miami. He was terrible, and he was not seeing a defense that was all that dynamic. They didn't change very much. It showed me limitations of him as a visionary across the field. He didn't recognize what was coming. He struggled with the blitz. He couldn't even avoid it as well. His eyes were trained down the field, but usually when he would escape, he's going to tuck it and go, try to make a move. He wasn't doing that. He was still looking down the field, but it was like he didn't know where the receivers were. He was trying to pick up where everybody was. The bottom line here for me, I feel like I could put him in the top 7 and I could put him in the top 15. And it's for the exact reason that you said. He doesn't have a legitimate comparison, good or bad. He doesn't have anybody who impacts his team's offense the same way. So I don't know how you rank him, but I also kind of feel like nothing else is wrong. This gets me to the main point here, though, Doug, and this is what I wanted to really dive into. You get situations like that, and to me, what this always boils down to is how credible are the people who are gathering the information, or how credible are the people who are making the opinions directly. Fowler's a reporter. He went and spoke to people. He got quotes on the record, but nameless. We'll leave it for another time of how much we should really trust the people who are saying it. But Fowler,
don't get me started on anonymous scouts. Yeah,
it's difficult. It's difficult. It's a very gray issue. For Fowler's sake, let's accept for the construct of what he did that they're speaking. They said the words that they said. We'll never know the intent behind that. As Mike Florio pointed out, Pro Football Talks editor Mike Florio, I thought he made an excellent point. Executives read this stuff. They really do look at this, and they will use it. They'll use anything really in when it comes to a contract negotiation. But part of the hubbub here in regards to Lamar is how much of an impact does that make on a quarterback who's entering a contract year? That's kind of tough to think of. And my first thought is, it's ridiculous. You should see what goes into these things. People don't even know. They think that this is, it's like an election. You know, it's just simply not done like that. But that's what I wanted to kind of peel back the curtain here and discuss. Like I said at the beginning of the show, I manage a network of writers who create this content plus a lot of other stuff. I have a world of respect for Doug, for all the people who work for me, for the massive amount of content that we produce. At the same time, I think it's safe to say a lot of these lists are taken far more seriously than they probably should be. Yeah. And when the people who create them are the ones saying that, it should kind of turn your head. I feel it is reasonable to make the opinion that Lamar Jackson on a quarterback list might not be in the top 10 of that.
I would struggle if I were doing quarterbacks for us, which I do, because Mark is a quarterback guy, played quarterback in Division III. I'm not going to step on his toes there. But if it were my list to make, I would not put Lamar in the top 10.
It doesn't have that. I feel there are 10 quarterbacks who play the position better than he does.
By the way, it
As of
turns
now.
out I wrote about that Dolphins game a couple days after it happened, and that I will give Lamar credit.
Savaged him.
Yeah,
They
the
beat his
Dolphins.
butt
Well,
bad.
and Brian Flores is cover 0, which
Yeah.
hello Pittsburgh. You guys are gonna have fun with Flores because that guy's sick. He's evil.
Smart.
Oh boy.
Also, part of the reason I wanted to bring this up is because of that game.
The Dolphins blitzed out of cover 0 more, and they would blitz out of cover 0 in dime. Like, I don't even know how you do that. They had more DB blitzes in that game than any other team over, I believe, the last 6 years. So it wasn't just cover 0. The thing about Flores, and I'm sure you got this from Belichick when he was in New England for all those years, he will give you cover 0, but it's like, okay, which flavor of hell do you want? I mean, it was different iterations of cover 0 that basically turned Jared Goff into a pumpkin. Not hard, I know, but to just say, oh, they beat him with cover 0 in a blitz, it's not that simple. So I will give Lamar credit because he was seeing things that not only he had never seen, but no quarterback, unless if you've been around as long as like a Tom Brady or a Aaron Rodgers, there was unusual stuff going on in that game. So I don't want people to think when we're talking about the cover 0 and the blitzes and all that, it's not just that. Flores had a great gift in Miami, and I'm sure it'll show up in Pittsburgh, of throwing blitzes at you that you don't know how to handle. I know Harbaugh had said that week after the game, yeah, we were prepared for it, or we thought we were, and then we saw these, it was like it starts, and then you think you know it, and then it's an offshoot, and it goes somewhere else. So, but when we talk about the Miami game and, down the stretch and all that, it wasn't as simple as Lamar's head exploding because they were throwing extra defenders at him. There was a lot more to it than that. I just want to point that out.
And it also wasn't as if that's the only bad game Lamar had. He had good games. He had bad games. It's the standard of playing quarterback in the NFL from a statistical achievement perspective now is way higher than it was even 10 years ago. And it's unrecognizable compared to what it was 20 years ago. Yeah. I remember when Steve Young broke the NFL regular season passer rating mark at like 104 in 1994. Yeah. 104 is like 7th in the league now. It's if you have any ability at all, you're at 95 or higher. And historically, that's just it's not comparable. So you have to look at it as the game has evolved. Our evaluation of the game has to go along with it. And some of that is peer-to-peer evaluation, which is to say,
Steve Young never saw cover 0 blitzes from 6 DBs.
Yes. Or from,
my God. If you go back and look at like
6'7", 290-pound, freakishly fast athletic monster off the edge.
If you go back and watch Marino in 84 or Montana in 89, and the static nature of defenses back then compared to now, it is an entirely different sport. So, yeah.
Yep. In football, side shoot, maybe we'll do this conversation at some point, Doug. Football is, of the 4 major North American sports, football is the one that has evolved the most and will continue to evolve.
Yep.
Baseball,
and it's racing faster, and it's more and more quick now. The evolution turns.
The game itself is
evolved more in the last 5 years than it has in the last 20, and in the last 2 more in the last 10.
And this is the future topic that we'll get into. There will literally be in flags in 20 years. I'll bet you on that. They're even talking about it openly now.
I wrote a schematic history of pro football in 2018. I could redo the whole thing and put 4 or 5 new chapters.
Exactly.
In it. That was 5 years ago. I mean, just forget it.
The game is built to do exactly what it's doing, and I think that's good for the game. But anyway, what I really wanted to dive into, the credibility piece of the people like yourself, like Mark Schofield, another great national NFL writer that we have on Touchdown Wire. A lot of people do it on a lot of different networks for a lot of different publications. You have your reasons for doing it, because at the end of the day, these things really are an opinion. You have an opinion, and so do the writers. Who is right is kind of a side point. You can have bad opinions, you can have good opinions, but in the end, it is an opinion. And when it comes to something that is essentially unnatural, ranking same position players against each other, you can't really do that in any way that makes more logical sense without determining factually what the most important parts of that specific position are. And there are so many different ways to play the game. Lamar Jackson is the prototype of that right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's really hard to put him anywhere. I'm not getting into the polar extremes for one side or the other. As far as Lamar, I recognize him as a game-breaking talent, and I recognize him as a guy that doesn't throw the ball as well as some of his peers do. Those are both reasonable and fair opinions of his ability. Where he is on a list is arbitrary. It is completely up to whoever is making it. So what
Totally
I wanted, yeah, and that's not a bad thing, though. I don't want to act as if anyone's trying to hide something, that they're trying to muddy up the waters for any particular reason.
Yeah.
It's not about.
I'm not. I mean, I think Fowler has his process, and I respect it. And the list, it's great reading. Mike Sando of The Athletic with his quarterback tiers, where he talks to a bunch of executives, and Mike will interject his own analysis based on what he sees. I know Matt Bowen of ESPN's NFL Matchup has helped Fowler with those lists as well, because Fowler mentions that in the pieces, and Matt's a brilliant guy. I can only speak to how I do it and how Mark does it, which when I say we don't do this or that, I'm not saying we're better or our process is more organic or holistic or wholesome. It's not about that. I can tell you what I do. And it's pretty much
holes. There are holes in whatever process.
Absolutely.
Honestly, where you should end up is
you should see me today trying to figure out whether Deebo Samuel is the 8th best slot receiver or the 5th best slot receiver for the list next week. It's like, God, ugh.
It's a task that doesn't have. There are some answers that are more right than others, and that's illogical. But
and it really is
to be that way.
Yeah, perfect is the enemy of the good. You get as close as you can to perfect. It's it's close enough for Jazz.
To me, what I look for in that type of content is there a reasonable and honest effort made to produce the information? You mentioned Rich Gannon. I'll pick on Rich Gannon a little bit here as well. When you've been doing this for a while, when you read 13 hours a day, when you know what's coming out across everything that publishes anything to do with the NFL, you get kind of a sense of how it's being done. Okay. Just to put that mildly, that opinion from Rich Gannon screams, I only watch his highlights and I only look at his stats. I don't watch the whole game. You can't evaluate the quarterback position on his highlights or his stats alone. You have to see everything that goes into it. The example that I would use for that, Doug, the high and the low, is Justin Herbert. Mm-hmm. Justin Herbert, as you and I have talked about, put Josh Allen in this boat as well. These are young men who have done things with the football that I don't think God even intended to have done on a football field. No. They're weaponized. These guys are complete evolutionary freaks when it comes to throwing a football to a certain place.
They're built like edge rushers, and they can run like running backs, and they can throw like they have arm cannons.
You can't even decide necessarily what the best part of them is. But what I know is Justin Herbert and Josh Allen have more arm talent, I think, than anybody who's ever lived. And they're playing at the same time, and they're 25 years old. Yeah. Those guys, I'm going to rank higher on a list than Lamar Jackson. They're both good athletes. Josh Allen in particular is an exceptional athlete. Lamar Jackson beats the pants off him as an open field runner. They're both excellent. Nothing against Josh Allen. Lamar Jackson is so far above and beyond history at what he does. So if we're evaluating all of these things, what I'm looking for is honesty more than anything. Give me an honest effort. And believe me, I've read millions of words. I know if what you're saying is legitimate or not. I can tell very, very quickly.
I've told you before, the more you watch a tape, the more you can tell who isn't.
Yes.
Who's bull crapping their way through it.
And usually the ones that recognize that they don't know shit are the ones that are actually doing it right.
Well, Greg Cosell, who, with the passing of Dr. Z, is kind of the godfather of all of us tape dorks, has told me more than once, the more I know, the more I learn. It's like for everything he learns, he realizes 8 things he didn't know or hadn't seen before. And that's intellectual curiosity. That's wanting to get better at your gig.
I don't think a play goes by. I don't think that. And it's usually like, shit, okay.
Yeah.
They planned all of this, and it's amazing to see the coordination of it, because it's like, oh wow, I never thought of that. Didn't see that happening. The point is, when you put these things together, if you're not honest in what you're doing, you're not going to come up with a passable product. You are writing to complete. You're not writing to inform. You want to get done and move on to the next thing. This style content is not for that. So really what I'm saying is, when you read a listicle, you can tell to a certain degree who's put the time in to actually formulate an opinion and isn't just aggregating 10 other lists, taking an average and spouting off the history of the player as if it's Wikipedia. Lamar Jackson came into the league doing this. It doesn't do a damn thing for me. Okay. That's not analysis.
Well, what did I say this? I mean, we were talking this morning. I said, there are some of these they're looking to create a ranking. I'm looking to understand it.
Yeah.
I don't care whether Lamar Jackson is the best quarterback in the NFL or the 15th best. I don't have any rooting interest. That's been beaten out of me over, 20 years of doing this. Here's how I do it with any position. And right now I'm working on slot receivers, so I'll look at that. I go between Pro Football Focus and Sports Info Solutions. I look at a whole bunch of different stats, and I put together in Google Docs a list based on the stats of about 20 players to boil down to 12. Then I go to the tape. So I'm not stats versus tape. If you're not doing both, you're not doing it. If you're metrics versus tape, wrong answer. Either way is the wrong answer. Both is the right answer. Either way is the wrong answer. So then I go to the tape and I'm like, well, not to beat up on Christian Kirk, because, everyone beat up on his contract with the Jaguars, and we have to talk about that. A really good deep slot receiver. But you look at the quality of the deep completions. And there was he had a long touchdown against the Lions where the safety was doing, I don't know what, like turning around, like square dancing 30 yards downfield. And Kirk's like, yeah, I could press him vertically, but really all I have to do is stand here and catch the ball. That's not to pick on Christian Kirk, who had far more deep slot opportunities than a Deebo Samuel. But Deebo Samuel, who some people think is a gadget player, that guy's an alien. He can do anything. And we were talking about quarterbacks before. You have to watch the whole game, because it's not just the throws the quarterback does make. It's just as important to see the throws he doesn't. And the stuff Jimmy Garoppolo leaves on the table where Deebo Samuel is wide ass open, it's agonizing. I wrote a long tape piece when the Deebo contract thing was at its apex. And I'm like, oh, here's one, deep over 40 yards. That's a touchdown. And he's just standing there with the ball. So I look at the metrics. I compile a list of, say, 20 to get down to, say, 12. And then I look at the tape and I go, okay, here are the numbers. What does the tape tell me about the quality of these numbers? And that's when I'll start to, because we have honorable mentions for all these, and I'm going to bust this guy down. And then from there, once I've done the stats and I've watched the tape and I have an idea, okay, this is what it all means, then I'll put, I'll get into ranking. All right, this is, this guy and that guy. Here's number one. Here's number whatever. I don't talk to coaches or executives, because if if anyone has any pushback on my rankings, I don't want to have to ask 4 different people why they said this or that.
Let me interject.
It's a one source thing.
This
I'm
is
not,
the main
again,
issue.
I'm not including anyone else's process. I'm telling you how I do it.
Yeah, if you want to gather, if the point of what you are producing, if the reason you are making the content that you're making is to get information from executives, people who probably have more access to other comments that are being made, and they're in a position to make the $1 million decision, that's fine. The problem that I have with it, and I didn't even create this topic to discuss today to bash Jeremy Fowler or the work that he's doing at all. That wasn't the
it's
point.
not about that at all.
I wanted to just discuss
a great deal of respect
how
for
these
him
things.
That's not what it's about.
The way these things are put together, there's a lot of different ways to do it.
Yep.
Really, what I'm saying is talking to the executives, the coaches, and the scouts. It eliminates your ability to weigh in on whatever it is. And if
as I said, we were talking about this morning. I said, okay, let's say some executive has a completely horseshit take. Do you? I would imagine Fowler does know enough to push back. But if you're compiling these reactions from these other people, do you know enough about the player?
I would challenge that by saying, is Fowler there to do that? Is he supposed to challenge the executive?
Probably not.
No. So again, we get into a real black and white area. Do you need to talk to the executive? Should you talk to the executive? Are you going to get more from that? And on top of that, executives aren't nearly as stupid as fans think they are. They know how to control and manipulate the media. Yeah. None of them have any reason to be honest. Just none whatsoever. I'm not accusing them of lying. I'm just saying, what benefit do they have being honest on the record about their opinion?
Right.
It doesn't make any sense. It's contradictory in and of itself. So to me, if you're going to do it for you, or do it all purely on them, which is like what Fowler is doing.
Yeah.
I don't see a reason
there's nothing
to push
wrong
back.
with that. There's nothing wrong about that or other people doing it or Sando with his quarterback tears, which I know people read and discuss and, it's great.
It seems to me a lot of it is like, yeah, you know what? I know how to regurgitate the same BS that everybody else does. Joe Burrow led his team to the Super Bowl. So never mind the fact that he didn't play particularly well in the playoffs. He wasn't, their defense led their team. I don't know how anybody could not notice that, let alone NFL executives. If you know what you're watching, and I'm not saying that Joe Burrow is bad. I'm just saying to put him that high on the list because the Bengals defense almost won them a Super Bowl is intellectually dishonest. If you've watched this, you know he probably is not better as a quarterback right now than Justin Herbert. I don't care if his team advanced further in the postseason. That's not wholly what this is about. In fact, I think that's the biggest cop-out because in reality, Doug, this is the one objective measurement of it all, wins and losses. If that's the only thing we're going on, we're having a different conversation. We're not talking about the best quarterback. We're really talking about the captain of the best team. That's not the same thing as the best quarterback.
And sometimes the quarterback isn't even the captain of the best team.
Yeah, I'm being figurative with that.
Yeah.
If the quarterback isn't the captain of your team, though, something's probably wrong with your team.
Well, I'm not saying anything about anyone. I grew up with Dr. Z. I've known Greg Cosell for a long time. I got all these books years ago behind me because it's not, rich mahogany, whatever. It's because I wanted to learn. I wanted to be able to, do this myself without relying on other people. I wanted it to be a one-stop shop. So that's why I do it. I can't speak to why anyone else does it the way they do it, but the way I do it and the way Mark does it, the way, Lori Fitzpatrick, we at Touchdown Wire do it is these are my opinions based on statistical study and tape study and all this stuff we do all the time, however many hours a day. We will stand or fall on that. I don't have to talk to the assistant GM of the Tennessee Titans or whatever and ask him, okay, so I got a lot of, crap for this ranking. Why did you say this? Whatever the ranking is, I know exactly what it is. I know exactly why it is. I know exactly how I got there.
That's why for me, I would
Mark.
prefer.
I will ask Mark sometimes, or Mark will ask me, like when we compile the top 101 for the last week of July, I'll have a rough 101 list with a bunch of guys at the bottom, like, should I put this person in or not? And Mark and I will go back and forth on it. I'm not asking a bunch of executives, hey, do you think Derrick Henry should be at 20 or 15 or what?
Then we get into the specifics of the questions that they're being asked. And in my opinion, that's outside of the poll itself. If you're asking them to rank them, get the rankings. It's just, I imagine
it's not a leading question. It's how would you rank
Yeah, I mean, you can't do it any other way. That's my point.
And what are your thoughts?
Like I said at the beginning, this whole thing boils down to the credibility of the person gathering the information or reviewing the tape and writing up their analysis of it. It's about the person that's producing it. And a lot of times it doesn't need to be made into more than it is, the way this is. We just spent 50 minutes talking about a quarterback for a different team because of the uproar that this whole thing has created.
I mean,
for me, the whole thing is just empty air. It's like, why?
Yeah,
it doesn't matter. You can't say that he is the greatest passer in the NFL. That's a big part of being a quarterback.
Right.
If he's not in the top 10, there are reasons that he's not.
Think he is. I also
I don't think that's unreasonable.
Frightening weapon in the league.
But at the same time, I don't feel comfortable playing the guy. And I follow a team that's beat his butt a couple times. But he's dangerous. He's a bad dude. You don't want that guy in the field next to you.
The reason we do them, the high-minded reason, is because it prepares us for the NFL season with a cogent and complete analysis of all the players in the NFL. The real reason, clicks in July, and it works. So there you go.
Content in July. Content.
Well, we're going to do content either way. These click well. They work.
But it's the focus. See, this is the same thing though. This dovetails into everything else that I'm talking about. There is a difference between, and I'll save the clickbait rant for another time, but there's a difference between creating something.
It's not clickbait. We put a lot of hours into this stuff. It's not clickbait, but it is clickable, and there are reasons.
Yeah. Well, how about this, Doug? I wouldn't have hired you if you didn't create stuff that people wanted to click. There's no reason to act as if you don't want people to read it.
To be readable. Yes.
Yeah, that's kind of a thing. That's why I edit and I don't write. Nobody clicked on anything I wrote. It's a different situation for you. We're going to market to that. This is a good thing. It's a benefit. We don't come up with cheap ideas. We don't come up with chintzy stuff unless there's, some tongue-in-cheek value to it. It's humorous. It's fun. You do that stuff in June and July because there isn't really anything else to go over at that particular moment.
Nothing of substantive value that would replace lists like these that go into the 101, and you can lead that into the season. I mean,
it takes a while to compile the 101. There's a lot of work that goes into that. At the same time, you can't be banging out content every other way while you're doing that. Different hats that you have to put on. It's a different style of content. There's more work that has to go into that. So all the point is, all these things have different reasons, different functions within the digital ecosphere.
Right.
So the value of the high quality content which you produce, whether it's clicky or not, it's about the delivery. It's how you are presenting that information. Yeah. Are you giving me an honest, well thought out opinion? I find that you do, and I'm not just saying that. I don't agree with everything that you say. There's stuff that I text you about in a rage over how dumb I think that it is. It's not unreasonable. I'm telling you that.
I know guys that are very highly placed in this industry who I almost always disagree with, but I know their process and I respect it. So I would never say to these people, "You are an idiot." It's like, okay, explain to me why you think this guy is great when he totally sucks. But because I respect the process and I know the process, it's like, well, I would rather disagree with someone intelligent than agree with someone stupid. I mean,
how about this? Let's put it like this. There's a certain list.
Or not stupid, but people who don't put in the work. I don't want to say stupid. I want to say people who don't put in the work. People whose processes I would not respect.
The intellectually dishonest process.
The intellectually uncurious process, which is
there is a listener within our audience who disagrees with me about Tyreek Hill. You and I disagree about Tyreek Hill. Yeah, but you don't listen, I'm sure. Of the tens and tens.
I have once in a while.
When you're on,
I subscribe. I'm a YouTube subscriber to the New Standard podcast. So get off my lawn.
We don't agree on Tyreek Hill fundamentally.
Right
now, we could get into the specifics behind that. I'm not saying that he's a bad receiver. I'm saying that if a team gives you 5 draft picks for the opportunity to not pay him $27 million a year, you jump all over that for Tyreek Hill. Okay, some receivers maybe not, but he's not one of them. He's not the top end dude. That's really the point that I'm making with the guy. Okay, see that's.
Go watch the Bengals trying to bracket him in the AFC Championship game and get back to me.
The Bengals in the second half did a pretty damn good job. I mean, it didn't seem like they had much of a problem. That last throw wasn't there. You know that.
Yeah.
The one that got picked off, that was to Hill, wasn't it?
I think so.
Yeah,
that was
it was a shitty throw. I don't know what Mahomes was doing there, but
yeah.
Then we'll get into that too. Let's talk about another show. We'll talk about the regression of Patrick Mahomes. Not a banner year for him, but he's also a guy that has built up the scratch and the capital to have perhaps a year like that. But you have to evolve as a team. You have to evolve, and without Hill there, they're going to have to evolve. The Ravens have to evolve. The Ravens need to believe that the wide receiver is an important part of the game.
Well, and to get it back to the Steelers for a second, I was on with Aaron Schatz and Mike Tanier of Football Outsiders, who I wrote for eons. We were discussing their pass coverage tiers. They do lists in tiers. And they had me on because I write about DBs all the time. We were talking about Levi Wallace. And I said there are times when it's almost better to move on from a player whose athletic upside you get so invested in that you live too much with the oof plays and those high variance players. I could see in a vacuum how Andy Reid and the coaching staff would say, you know what we need is different things than Tyreek Hill. We want not a more plodding offense, but a more sustaining offense. And this guy's a Lamborghini. He's off the charts. Maybe we don't need off the charts. Maybe
you drive the Lamborghini because you have the Lamborghini.
Yeah.
When it's time to drive the Honda Civic, that's what you drive.
But if you're in a school zone, which they were against too high all year, maybe you need something else.
Yeah. And I would agree with that. What I was saying really is that the fact that they traded him was predicated far more on the fact that he wants to get paid at that top tier of receiver market. And he's 28 years old.
And now he's in an offense
offering you.
Yeah. And now he's in an RPO and a can offense. So good luck with that.
Yeah, Tyreek Hill, boy, he's gonna fall. I'm telling you, he's not the right receiver for that team at all.
Gonna get ugly
at all.
Well, they have they have him. They have Jalen Waddle, who's a great vertical slot receiver when he was given the opportunity to do so. They have Cedric Wilson from the Cowboys, underrated slot guy. Mike Gesicki, one of the better slot tight ends. They have 4 top 20 slot receivers.
A lot of slot.
What are we doing here? I know speed. What is the plan?
Yeah, that's one of those. That's it. That's really the main thing.
What do we do?
If you have a plan, great. It just
seems
really odd. I'm not sure how you're going to change all of that.
If you're just assembling athletes for a less defined purpose, that generally doesn't work out. You get your dream teams together, and we know how that goes.
All right, Doug, before we close out here, where is Mitch Trubisky on Mark's quarterback rankings?
Number 1 with a bullet.
Number 1 with a bullet. Take that to the bank. He is, without question, the best quarterback in the game. I don't know why I wrote that down.
I will say this about
I got a troll.
I will say this about that offense, and I wrote about this. Kenny Pickett, better deep passer than you think. Oh God, the guy. Why am I drawing a blank on the guy from Georgia?
George Pickens. Pickens.
Absolute,
our soon-to-be savior.
Absolute monstrous freak. Calvin Austin.
Deal. Love Calvin Austin.
Well, and everyone says, "Oh, he's a slot guy." No. 90% outside is slot.
He's just small.
Do the Steelers have a history of taking smaller receivers in the middle rounds and putting them outside and having success with that? I don't think they do. Do they?
The best thing is the Steelers have far more track record taking a big receiver from the outside, moving him inside than they do the other way around. So I think they're fine. I think you put talent on the field, you throw them the ball. You hope to do something with that. With Trubisky, I'm assuming he'll be the starter, although the last time I ran solo on this, I talked for 40 minutes of why I really think that Pickett should be given a legitimate chance to win that job outright. It'll be Trubisky because I feel this offense, by design, they've been wanting to do more RPOs. And I think Trubisky is a reasonably priced RPO.
I think it's possible
kind
to
of
do more
quarterback.
RPOs than they did last year.
Yeah, that's top to bottom.
Unless you're Miami.
It's
or
the main
Kansas City, actually.
It's the only thing that fits with Trubisky for what the Steelers have been trying to do.
RPO
he's a low price guy.
Those are the 2 things he does well. RPO and boot.
You have him do that. You keep it manageable. And tell him, going back to your point earlier, I even wrote this down that I wanted to talk about later. The throws you don't make, The throws that you missed, the opportunities that you missed, that's Trubisky's mantra.
And it's not the throws. It's not the guy you overthrow. It's the guy who is wide open.
The throw is there. You've got to hit that.
A deep over. He's beating the corner, and you're just standing there with the ball in your hand, like brain freeze.
Blame the coach all you want.
That will kill you.
Plenty of that in Mitch
Those are the things that will kill your offense.
Yeah. You have to make plays in this game, and we've gone. Lance and I have talked about this to death. This offseason in particular, there isn't anything that's ever come up on this show that we say, what do the Steelers need to do? That doesn't include, they have to create splash plays. They don't have any. They haven't had any for years now. Pickens is nothing but a splash play. That guy is a splash play waiting to happen. So if you're not going to get him the ball down the field, what are we doing? Why are you here? You shouldn't be here. I don't like the fit with him and Trubisky, but to your point, love him with Pickett. Pickett has make balls. Deep throws. Pickett is the guy. Yeah, he's going to go.
He has balls, but he also has deep accuracy.
Yeah, my point is he's willing to do it. Trubisky either doesn't want to, or he flat out doesn't see it.
I can get a quarterback with balls for $5. What I can't get is a quarterback with deep accuracy.
Get one without either for $7.5 million if you're in Pittsburgh.
Well,
we'll get into that yet again another time. But
you're just an angry young man.
It's more humorous at this point. It's just such an easy topic to troll. People get really mad. Mitch Trubisky has done nothing for the Pittsburgh Steelers, for the city of Pittsburgh. Yet they've ridden him in on a donkey and laid palm trees down at his feet. I don't understand why. The guy,
fascinating. Somebody watching.
He's accomplished nothing in his career.
Somebody watching this, get your Photoshop together for that one.
Yep. Hey, and you know what? I've said this from the beginning. If he's successful, I will be able to tell you exactly why.
With the whole thing, that's your next graphic for the show.
If we'll tell Lats will be watching this. We'll put that together. True story though, really quickly before we get out of here. I had Matt Latimer, that's Lats, the Steelers Wire social media editor, does a fantastic job. Check out Steelers Wire on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Some of the best content in social media you'll see. I was having him do, I wish he was here. I want to ask him. I was having him do a poster, and it was going to be, and rest in peace, all due respect to Dwayne Haskins. The thought was at this point, the Steelers were going to sign Brissett, and it was going to be Rudolph, Haskins, Brissett, and a rookie that they would draft. And it was just kind of a joke that we had. We were going to put the four of them together on something. I forget what it was, but then they signed Trubisky and it just blew the whole thing. I think that's probably part of my anger, because that poster was going to be
I remember when I was on this show and I predicted that they would sign Trubisky for all these reasons, and boy, did you get pissed.
Yep.
You were beside yourself.
I was 100% certain there's no way in hell they were going to do that. And then it was like, shit, of course they are.
Like, you watch
Makes all the sense in the world.
That offense. I know you Canada's offense. Well, you watch it.
Hashtag Canada's offense.
Hashtag Canada's offense. Blame Canada.
No, they'll be a very effective 6.9 yards an attempt passing team. Very, very efficient. They will do it. Once again, though, if they want to make big plays, they're going to have to make it after the catch. They're not going to go. I don't think they're going to stretch the field all that much. Yes, George Pickens is a beast, and he could catch 5 touchdowns of 40 yards or more. That does not make you a big-time vertical offense. It doesn't mean that you are doing that consistently. You're not moving the needle a whole lot overall. And that's it. It's a part of preparing for the Steelers that you'll need to do. If keep in mind, he's coming off significant injury. If he is able to get out there and make that kind of an impact, great.
If he's him back when he was healthy, like imagine him in the slot, Austin outside, they're going to switch release.
Yeah.
Good luck.
That type of stuff, or even but if it isn't Austin, Deontay Johnson, have that be an option route.
Run some 3x1 with your backside ISO like everybody else. Frymuth is the ISO, or whoever.
Yep, and you can do that. NFL teams can do that. I think that they have. Pickens is the special talent of that group for sure. I like Deontay Johnson. I think he's a good receiver. Pickens though is the elite level talent.
Yeah,
Trubisky. They're going to need to scheme up what they're going to do with him, and it's a lot of it's still going to be RPO. And my fear, you brought up the name earlier, is Jimmy Garoppolo. That's the same type of guy that he is. If Jimmy has to try too hard to throw the ball down the field, he's not going to.
He
won't. Doesn't even look.
He won't.
Trubisky plays like he doesn't even see most of the field.
And I was doing some tape study on Amon-Ra St. Brown. Oh, it was the Vikings game where he broke up the interception and then caught the touchdown pass. And there were 3 or 4 instances in that game, and I think when they played the Bengals, where Amon-Ra St. Brown, who turned out to be really good, was wide ass open, and Goff was just standing like, throw that,
I don't even know.
Throw the ball. These guys who won't do
throw the ball, you pinhead.
God. Anyway,
Jared Goff, another fine evaluation done.
And now people want them to trade Garoppolo to Seattle.
Oh, wouldn't that be fun? Tim Weaver, our Seahawks editor, was saying something about that, but I think it was more out of just pure bitterness that right now there's, and he will put emphasis added. He will put in italics, there's a competition between Drew Lock and Geno Smith. The bitterness is just fantastic.
Battle of the bands at the state here.
Of course, hey, you know what? We could be saying the same thing about Pickett and Trubisky next year. Who knows? You never know. It's a year-to-year league. Year league.
Yes,
it is an hour-to-hour show, and we are over that now. And as soon as Lance comes back from his CIA mission in parts unknown, he's going to scream at me about that. So, Doug, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. It's always great to pick your brain a bit. Definitely hope we can connect down the road again.
Yeah, we'll throw it down.
Thank you all for
after
listening.
Trubisky's first 400-yard 5-touchdown game will come back.
If he comes out in week 1, holy shit, I'm gonna have to wear Kevlar. I'm gonna get assaulted up and down.
We'll make you a custom.
No, I'll go on record in saying this. You know what's gonna be? It's gonna be 17 of 30 for 240 yards, 2 big plays down the field, 2 touchdowns and a pick, and everyone's gonna come out. See, you were wrong. Like, yeah, that's a monster game. That's not at least minimum of average in the NFL or anything. That's.
I think you and Mitch just need to get together and talk it out and heal.
I'm just saying the guy isn't. Everybody knows my thoughts on this.
You hated him. You hated him before he even hit Pittsburgh.
I just don't think he's good. That's all. I don't want him connected with the Steelers. I don't want him on the Steelers. And here he is.
You don't want him connected with his team. Take off that uniform.
Well, do you want Geno Smith running your team for another year?
It ain't my team.
Well, you get the point.
I do not have a rooting interest.
You can understand the lack of enthusiasm behind.
I would say that the philosophy of going all in on Drew Lock based on the fact that you liked him in college and ignoring the last 3 years of NFL tape is an interesting decision.
I will say this right now, I'd rather have Mitch Trubisky than Drew Lock. Does that get me anything? I'd rather have.
I don't. That if we're talking about quarterback tiers, I think they're
top. You're doing top 11 quarterbacks, not top
Geno
64.
Smith. Yeah, that's a list.
Still in the league. All right,
I think Mark's was like 17 or last. He may do 64. I don't know.
17 isn't a bad idea either. If he can do set well, he can do 17.
This goes to 17. I have amps over there, and I want an amp that goes to 17.
This is one more, isn't it? Yes, I'm Neal Coolong. I was your solo host, probably for the last time as soon as Lance watches the show, of the New Standard podcast.
I blame myself.
Typically hosted with Lance Williams. I want to thank our guest, Doug Farrar. You can check out his work on touchdownwire.usatoday.com. Check him out on Twitter. You see on his flag, his handle there. Great conversation, Doug. I appreciate your time. Everyone else, have a great week. We hope to see you again. Training camp is coming soon. Less listicles, more news, and more Steelers football.